Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a great weekend. I finished reading The Black God's Drums by Peter Djèlí Clark this evening, and I loved it. It was a very entertaining read, but it was a book that, it's 110 pages. It starts off strong, and it maintains this high level of energy and wonder throughout the entire narrative. It's just magnificent. A wonderful, wonderful work by Clark. It's the type of book I might actually reread in the same year, and I almost never, like truly almost never do that. But it's early in the year, and I'll have to let my wife read this one. I kept praising it to her throughout yesterday and today, so she's curious now. But I loved it, and I really can't recommend it highly enough. If you enjoy steampunk, if you enjoy Afrofuturism, if you enjoy fantasy, any of those. If you just want a story that has a lot of energy and one that is going to maintain your interest and your focus, this is the book for you. It is magnificent, and I can't praise it highly enough. Very quickly, it is all of those things that I mentioned. It's steampunk without being a steampunk book that dwells on the Victorian technology. So there are airships, there are airship moorings, there's a Gatling gun. There's a handful of things like this. There's like characters with gas masks and a really horrifying reason for that. So all of that's happening. And there's this, New Orleans is a free port city maintained by multiple great powers. In 1884, as the United States and the Confederate States are in a tenuous armistice, Harriet Tubman is mentioned as a general, just in one single throwaway line. It's important to note that Clark is a black writer, and so it's not one of those what would have happened if the South had won the Civil War books like you find in alternate history, like Harry Turtledove's series, which I read almost the entire series up into World War II in my teenage years. No. This is much better. It's like 1/40 of the length. But it really is magnificent. We're in, our main character is Creeper, who is a 14-year-old, 13-year-old, street urchin really, who lives up on top of one of the airship moorings, these massive walls built by the Dutch to protect New Orleans from hurricanes. And she finds out about this conspiracy about the Black God's Drums, and it all relates to Haitian independence and a storm that wiped out Napoleon's fleet. And that somebody might be, conjuring that again, and it might bring about a truly terrifying disaster there in the Gulf. So it's magnificent. The characters are sharply drawn, but as I mentioned, the aspect of it that focuses on African culture, that focuses on the orishas, on many of the ancestral beliefs of African people, is probably the strongest part. The characters are amazing. They're carefully drawn. There's a deep level of energy to them. And the alternate history is very lived in and embedded. The guilds of New Orleans, kind of function almost like the mid-century gangs of New York. But this is also what you get. My eyes latch onto a little dandy-looking man in a rusty plaid suit with a slicked back, shiny brown hair, and a curly mustache. He got a tight grip on his bags, but there's a golden pocket watch dangling on a chain at his side. A clear invitation, if I ever saw one. Somebody's bound to snatch it sooner or later. Might as well be me. I'm about to set out to follow him when the world suddenly slows. The air, sounds, everything. It's like something grabbed hold of time and stretched her out at both ends. I turn, slow-like, to look out from the wall as a monstrous moon begins to rise into the sky. No, not a moon, I realize in fright. A skull, a great big bone white skull that fills up the night. It pushes itself up past the horizon to cast a shadow over the city underneath, where the gaslights snuff out one by one. I gape at that horrible face, stripped clean of skin or flesh, that stares back with deep, empty black sockets and a grin of bared teeth. It's all I can do not to fall to my knees. Not real, I whisper, shutting my eyes to make the apparition go away. I count to 10 in my head, whispering all the while, not real, not real, not real. When I open my eyes again, the skull moon is gone. Time has caught up to normal too. The sounds of the night returning in a rush. And the city is there, spread out again, breathing, shining, and alive. I release a breath. This was all Oya's doing, I know. The goddess has strange ways of talking. Not the first time I've been sent one of her visions, though never anything so strong. Never anything that felt so real. They're what folk call premonitions, warnings of things about to happen or things soon to come. Most times I can figure them out quick, but a giant skull moon? And so what we realize is that Creeper, has an aspect of the African goddess Oya within her consciousness, and she can feel it. And that becomes something that other characters experience within this narrative too. And it's handled so well. Like Clark just captures all these different aspects and he fuses them together. And as I said, and then so he fuses this wonderful, interesting, fascinating world, and it just, spices it all up so that we're curious about everything going on. And then maintains our interest on this central narrative that is just, pulsing through the book. So as I said, I love this book. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I don't want to talk too much more about it because I feel like I'll spoil everything. And I want everybody else to experience the pleasure I had in reading this book. So please look for it in your library. Try to find a copy. Other works that it reminded me of. The very first entry in the Wild Cards anthology with Jet Boy by Howard Waldrop, I believe. That story, that episode from Wild Cards, if you enjoyed that, check out the Black God's Drums. The way that Victor Laval is fusing the Harlem Renaissance and Harlem black culture and jazz music and blues music into the Lovecraftian mythos was something that I felt Clark accomplished in an equally fascinating way. Thinking about Haiti, I was reminded of The Kingdom of the World by Alejo Carpentier, a Cuban novelist. And I'm probably going to read this year, now that I think about that. And then some of the ways in which Clark was focusing on like the consciousness and the spiritual aspect of the Black God's Drums reminded me of some of the writings from writers like St. John of the Cross or St. Teresa of Avila. And I have a lot of those in the Central Writings of Christian Mysticism. Can't talk about steampunk without talking about one of the founders, K.W. Jeter's Morlock Knight. And this was the one I was reminded of more so than Tim Powers or James Blaylock. Because Blaylock especially is much more steampunky. And Jeter's other works like the Infernal Devices book, which is amazing, is very steampunky. But this one really is more historical fantasy where there's magic happening. It's not just, airships or weird submarines. Things that you'd find in Jules Verne, H.G. Wells. There's also this sense of actual like magic and like purpose going on. And so that was why I was reminded of Morlock Knight, which is a masterpiece. And of course, Michael Moorcock, whose Warlord of the Air is one of the works that really captures that sense of alternative history, captures that sense of, does history recapitulate itself within the alternate history of a historical fantasy or a steampunk novel. And the last thing I'll say, and this will be my super scorching earth hot take, is that I read Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon, which is a great book. Here's the difference. Clark gives us all these cool little references, weird things that sent my mind, wondering. I truly was wondering about this world. I hope Clark writes other books, set within it. Set with Creeper, or with the captain from the Free Isles from Trinidad, who just the characters are amazing. The world is so interesting. Clark gives us all of that and allows us to wonder as human beings. And I think one of the failings of a lot of postmodern writers or modern writers is they have to explain every detail, as Pynchon does in Against the Day. And I loved this book. It was enjoyable. It was fascinating. Happy reading, everybody. Thanks.